Good evening. Julie's Travels, Chapter 2, A Dream of Heaven. Julie entered the house. She smelled the wonderful smells of dinner. Mom was such a good cook. Julie hadn't realized how late it was. She was so excited when talking to Evangelist that only now did she realize how hungry she was. Dinner would be the best time to talk to the family. Everyone would be together. She hurried to help Mother get things on the table. As the dinner started, she knew that eventually Mom or Dad would get around to asking her how her day was. So she waited for that opportunity, her little heart pounding. She did not have to wait long. Mom turned to her and asked the question. She took a deep breath and began. "Mom, Dad," bravely, "I do have something I want to share with you and something I want to ask you to do." She said a quick, silent prayer, asking God for help. "Oh," Mom said, sounding interested. "Yes," she said breathlessly. "I've been reading a book called the Bible. The book that Christian read." Mom and Dad's jaws dropped open, but nothing came out. So she continued, "I have learned wonderful and terrible things in this book, and I know they are true. There is a reason why our city is called the City of Destruction. It is because we are all sinners, and our city is to be destroyed because of the judgment of God. But we can be saved if we leave here. There is a wonderful home called the Celestial City, and if we give our hearts to Jesus, we can go there and live forever with Him." John 12:1-4. "There is such happiness there." At this point, Dad interrupted. Julie had become so excited and happy that she had got up and started walking around the room, speaking faster and with more and more conviction. "Truly," Dad said, "you will stop this immediately. You are talking about the place where Christian and Christiana went. I remember well when they left us, then the stir they caused in our city. Christian and Christiana were wrong. We cannot follow them. Where is this book you are speaking of? Give it to me this instant." "But please, Daddy, they were not wrong. They live in complete happiness now, and so can we." "Truly," Mom said, "you will get that book right now and bring it to us as your father has said. Now." As Truly had expected, Beverly was quietly snickering. With tears in her eyes, she turned and went upstairs to her room to get the book. She picked up the book lovingly and said, "Lord, are you there?" "I'm here," she heard. I will never leave you." Hebrews 3, verse 5. She returned to the dining room with the book. She noticed that her father seemed angrier than she had ever seen him, and her mother sat there with a very frightened look on her face and tears in her eyes. "Please, Mommy, it is true. What harm could it do for me to keep the book?" she asked quietly. Mom and Dad looked at her in astonishment. Then they looked at each other, not sure at all what to say. After a moment, Dad slowly reached out to Truly and said, "Hand me the book, Truly. Go to your room and we will talk about this later." Truly handed over her precious book, and overcome with tears, she ran to her room. She quietly closed the door, threw herself on the bed, and cried herself to sleep. As she slept, she dreamed a dream. It was of heaven. In her dream, heaven was more beautiful than anything she could have ever imagined. She wore the most beautiful white dress with lace and pearls all over it. She was not upset anymore. No burden and no crying. She felt only joy. Revelation chapter 21 and 22. When she awoke, it was morning. She wasn't sure what to think or do. It was not a school day, so she did not have to get ready for that. She could just wait in her room and see what happened. Just then she heard a knock on her window. She was surprised, since her window was 2 stories up. She jumped up and saw Evangelist standing there in her room by the window. She ran to meet him, and he held her and let her cry. "You must be brave, Truly. Trust me. I am sending an invitation to your family this day from the King of Kings. Remember that sometimes it's hard for pilgrims to see how the King is working in answer to your prayers. But just trust that He is always working everything out for your good." Romans 8:28. Truly was so comforted by these words, she smiled and closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, Mr. Evangelist was gone. Truly did not know what had taken place during the night. Mom and Dad had never gone to bed. They were so concerned about their daughter. They placed a few calls to some of their neighbors to see what they knew about this book, and they also wanted to find out more about Christian and Christiana. The people of the city were concerned as well, but couldn't say why. So Mom and Dad sat down to read the book themselves. As they read, they learned that their city was called the City of Destruction. They began to have a burden for their sin. They continued to read from the book, and talked together until the morning. Bravely had sat at the bottom of the stairs, out of sight, all night. He was interested to hear what this was all about, and what it was that his sister felt that was so very important. At first, he was very troubled by what he heard. He began to be burdened for his sin as well. And towards morning, he felt as strongly as Truly. He wanted to go to the celestial city too. At the sound of the doorbell, everyone in the house jumped. It was the Evangelist. Truly quietly slipped downstairs and stood by bravely as they watched. Evangelist gave Mom and Dad a bright paper rolled up and tied with a ribbon. Mom opened and read the golden words. "You and your family are invited to be saved from this city. Make your way to the celestial city where you may live with the King of Kings forever." Once again, Evangelist was gone. Mom and Dad looked at each other. "We must go, dear," Dad said. "Yes, we must," said Mom with strong conviction in her voice. Just then, Truly noticed that everyone in the family had the same heavy brown burden on their back. Mom turned and looked at Bravely and Truly. "Children, don't you agree that we should go?" "Oh, yes, Mom, I want to go too," said Bravely. Then they all looked at Truly and smiled with such joy. They embraced her, and she felt such happiness. She looked up to heaven and said, "Thank you." End of chapter 2. Next time, chapter 3. Neighbors try to persuade the family to stay. So let's see what happens and when Bravely and Truly and their family is going to be rid of that burden on their back. It's good. God bless.